Hi, everyone. I'm David Aragona, and welcome to the February 5th edition of Horses to Watch. On the episode this week, we're going to take a look at 3 races from last weekend where horses didn't have ideal trips in their races. We'll look at 1 race from Aqueduct and 2 maiden races from Gulfstream Park on the turf. But we'll begin with a dirt race at Aqueduct, and it was actually the feature race last Saturday, the Grade 3 Withers, one of the preps for the Kentucky Derby. And I want to focus on a trip that I think a lot of people saw, but it's worth highlighting in depth, and that's the trip of the number 2 Monday morning quarterback. Let's roll it right from the start because that's where this horse is going to have most of his trouble. You see he breaks about a length slowly and just gets squeezed back thereafter. And that's such a big problem because this is the horse that I think a lot of people expected to be on the lead in this race. He was coming out of one-turn sprint races where he had shown a lot of speed. So breaking slowly like that and getting shuffled back into the first turn, especially in a race like this where kickback is really important and the horse is trying a new distance for the first time, just really tough to overcome that early trouble. And all things considered, this horse is going to run a pretty remarkable race here. Now, the first quarter goes up in 23 4/5 seconds. That's not fast, but it's honest enough over this racetrack. But you're going to see as the entire field heads onto the backstretch, the field is going to start to bunch up as they begin to slow down the pace a little bit. And Monday morning quarterback is going to advance to get into this second flight of horses in behind the leaders here. And it's just going to end up between horses. You see his rider, Jorge Vargas, is steadying a little bit to try to get him to slow down so he's not running up on horses' heels. And now he's in traffic, in between horses, just in a totally foreign position for him because he's never really been behind another horse in traffic like this in any of his 3 prior starts. Now, coming around the far turn, the eventual winner, Max Player, is going to be to his outside, and he's starting to move here. But once Jorge Vargas asks Monday morning quarterback for a little bit of run, he's going to briefly put away Max Player and actually advance ahead of that rival coming to the quarter pole. Once they get into the stretch of this race, it briefly looks as if Monday morning quarterback is going to be fighting it out to actually win the whole thing, even after this poor trip. But as they start to get into the final eighth of a mile, he begins to tire a little bit, and he's eventually going to finish off the board in this race. But I think it's still a real credit to this horse's talent that he's actually taking the lead here at the 8th pole before tiring, considering that early trouble that he had. I think everything that he's showing in this race really bodes well for his prospects moving forward. I don't know if he's a real Kentucky Derby kind of horse. A mile and a quarter might be a little far for him. His pedigree is kind of tough to read, but I would imagine they'll consider coming back for a race like the Gotham next time. That's going a 1-turn mile, and given the fact that he's been successful sprinting in the past and the fact that he showed that he can rate behind horses and pass them, I think he projects to do really well in the Gotham as long as the field is of similar quality. So he's one that I would definitely look forward to do much better off this Withers performance. Now let's move down south to talk about 2 races from Gulfstream Park that took place on Sunday. These are both maiden races on the turf, going a mile, one for the Colts and Geldings and one for the fillies. Let's begin with the 3rd race on the card. This is the one for the Colts. And I want to focus on a first-time starter in this race. That's the number 11, Divestiture, who's going out for Chad Brown. Picking it up from the start, this is another horse who has some trouble coming out of the gate. You're going to see he breaks about a length slowly, and as they pass the wire for the first time, take note of this horse's size compared to some of the others in the race. He's a big, long-striding son of Pioneer of the Nile, and you're going to see as this race progresses, he gets into a little bit of traffic trouble, and I think that's really due to just his general greenness as a first-time starter and just his overall size compared to the rest of the field. Now, heading into the first turn, Irad Ortiz is trying to save some ground, but he can't really do it because there are horses inside of him. It's kind of a congested field, a large group of runners ahead of him. So he's going to have to rate this horse at the back of the pack, not really saving any ground. Obviously, that's not ideal. He's going to drift further back in the pack and be off the screen for a little while. I will just say, as we're on the backstretch of this race, that the eventual winner and second place finisher of this race are the number 2 and the number 6, Fancy Liquor and Counter Strike. And you see they're up close to the pace, so this is really a race that was dominated towards the front end. Don't pay too much attention to the fractions that are being posted in the upper right-hand corner because this is actually a race that was mistimed and they ended up hand-timing this race. The fractions are actually a whole lot slower than what you're seeing. But notice here now towards the right of your screen that Divestiture is beginning to make a premature move in those Klarovich silks. He's already passed about 3 or 4 runners, and he's advancing quickly under just mild urging from Irad Ortiz into traffic. And right here, there's going to be an incident. He's going to get into trouble. These horses bunch up, and a horse is going to lose its rider towards the back of the pack there. And watch Divestiture in those white and red silks. He just totally steadies out of position, can't sustain that momentum, and ends up drifting back towards the back of the field. I will note that the horse and rider that were involved in that incident, they were fine, so that's nothing to be too concerned about. But divestiture, after that, Irad Ortiz just didn't really ride it out to the finish. The race was basically over at that point as the leaders were sprinting away, and he finishes far back. But this is a horse who was making a real run around the far turn when that incident occurred, so he could have done a lot better if he had ever gotten a clear path at about the quarter pole. So he's one you want to look for next to mount because he's got a pedigree to be a really nice horse. I mentioned he was a son of Pioneer of the Nile, and on the dam side, his dam is he is a half sister, I should say, to Nicodemus, who was a winner of the Grade 3 Westchester last year on the dirt. But this horse can obviously handle the turf as well, so he's one I would look for in a maiden race next to mount because he ran a lot better than it seems. 2 races later at Gulfstream, we saw a similar spot, maiden special weight on the turf going a mile for the fillies, 3 years old. And I want to take a look at a second-time starter. This horse is also the number 11, and her name is Slidin Away, and we can pick this race up from the start. She breaks better than the 2 horses that we've watched in the prior 2 replays. And Jose Ortiz was on her, since he's breaking from an outside post position, you see here, he's hustling her a little bit to get into the race. It turns out, though, that hustling turns out to be all for naught because she gets in a little bit of traffic heading into the first turn. He's trying to tuck her over to save some ground now that he didn't get up towards the leaders. And the horses in front of him are just going to be a little bit green, and he ends up getting steadied and shuffled all the way back to last place by the time they're heading into the clubhouse turn. Even though she had broken a little bit alertly and he had tried to get this horse into the race, she turns out not in a desirable position as they progress onto the backstretch. Now, again, this is a similar situation where this race is dominated on the front end. The horse that's in front right now, Sea of Blue, she is going to be the eventual winner. There's not a whole lot of closing going on in this race, and I think that's notable as we discuss the trip of Slidin Away. She is going to return to the frame pretty shortly. Again, she's the number 11, that chestnut towards the back of the pack. Now, I mentioned this is her second career start. Her first start had come all the way back last summer at Saratoga. I remember that day. She is a horse that was bet down to, I think, 7-2. She had been working very well for Jimmy Toner prior to that race, and I think she finished 4th. Took her a long time to get back to the races, but she's going to do better, I think, based on this performance, because you see now towards the right of your screen, there she is with the shadow roll just coming back into view. And clearly she has run, and Jose Ortiz is just trying to pick a path for her to run through, but she's stuck in traffic here. You see now she's inside of another horse who's trying to close, but there are tiring runners to the inside. He's trying to find a path for her, can't really do it. And here, when he's really setting her down and asking her and putting her to the whip, she accelerates pretty impressively, and she's running up like she might even hit the board here. But again, she finds traffic as they're crossing the wire, and he can't ride her out through the finish line. This is a filly who could have done a lot better with a different kind of trip in this race, potentially even won this race. She clearly is that type of runner. Now she's coming in second off the layoff next time, off a 5th place finish. That's better than it looks. I don't expect this horse to be a maiden for very long. This is a trip that a lot of people saw, so she might get bet down next time. But this is a horse with ability who might be able to advance to better races in the future. So she's one that's worth watching for Jimmy Toner. So hopefully all of these horses that had less than ideal trips this past weekend can do better next time out. I think especially those 2 we just highlighted at Gulfstream, we could make a score on next time out when they come back in maiden races. So thanks for watching this week. I'll be back again next week to highlight 3 more trip horses on Horses to Watch.